anytime you are. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We are just so glad that you're here with us for the final QualLab lunch of the academic year. So thank you so much for being here. So we'll introduce, Bakari will introduce Dr. Lightle in a second, but let me just quickly share about, here's the website for Qual Lab, our Twitter account. Please follow us, you may already, and all the different things that are happening, including a resource guide on the web page, and we just constantly update that. There's videos from all the events, including this one. So in moving to housekeeping, we you can share questions as we go or at the end. I think Kim and I are both very flexible, but feel free to use them in the chat as well. And Bakari can always feed those to us, or just unmute yourself. It's a small group, so I feel like a conversation would be welcomed, and that's fine. We'll put this up on the website, and let us know if you need closed captioning, of course, before any event. So there we go. Lunch and learn outline for today. So I'll just turn it over to Bakari, and he can go ahead and introduce, and then after that we'll just roll with the session and have a lot of time for Q&A and wrap up. So that's where we're headed. Bakari, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Pasque. I am Bakari Lumumba. I am the Graduate Research Assistant with the Qual Lab, and I will be your moderator for our fourth and final Qual Lab lunch talk of the semester. As you all know, if you didn't know, the Qual Lab lunch talk series is a year-long series that Dr. Pasque and myself put together to provide the college with conversations about qualitative research and to help people learn a skill in relation to qualitative research. With that said, I'm going to begin by actually introducing Dr. Pasque and then, of course, Dr. Lightle. Dr. Pasque is a professor in educational studies, director of the Qual Lab, and director of qualitative methods in the Office of Research, Innovation, and Collaboration, College of Education and Human Ecology here at The Ohio State University. Her research addresses complexities of qualitative inquiry, inequities in higher education, and disconnections between higher education and society. She works with qualitative methodologies as well as studies qualitative methodologies that work towards social justice and educational equity. Dr. Pasque's research has appeared in approximately 100 journal articles and books, including in the Review of Higher Education, the Journal of Higher Education, Qualitative Inquiry, Diversity in Higher Education, and others. Dr. Pasque is also the current editor of the Review of Higher Education. The Review of Higher Education is considered one of the leading research journals in the field. It is the official journal of the Association for the Study of Higher Education. Dr. Pasque previously served as department head and professor at NC State University, as well as and she was also an endowed professor and named Researcher of the Year while at the University of Oklahoma. Dr. Kimberly Lightle received her PhD in Education Studies in 1995 from The Ohio State University College of Education, with a focus on science teacher education. Her first position after graduating was with the Eisenhower National Clearinghouse, a project housed in the OSU College of Education, and she has been with the college ever since. She has been funded through 5 National Science Foundation programs, as well as the Ohio Board of Regents and NASA, with budgets totaling more than $7 million. In her current position, Director of EHE, Office of Research, she directs the daily operations of the College of Education and Human Ecology Office of Research, including developing systems within the college for communicating funding opportunities and research accomplishments, including oversight of the office web presence and publication. She is building relationships with colleagues across the university, with community partners, professional organizations, with local school districts to expand the EHE pool of project collaborators. Dr. Lightle is developing enrichment programs for faculty that stimulate collaborative research, provide training in fundamental issues related to solicitation and administrative management of grants and contracts. Please help me welcome Dr. Penny Pasque and Dr. Kimberly Lightle this afternoon.
Thank you. That was lovely.
That's very nice. Thank you so much.
Very, very much.
Used to being on the other side and not a presenter, so it's fun to be in this role today. Well, thank you everybody for coming. We are so glad you're here. I'm gonna let Kim do the intro and we'll just go back and forth and move us through the conversation for today.
Well, I want to make sure everyone can see my slides. You know, when you're a presenter, sometimes you can't see exactly what everybody else is seeing. So just, do you see the slide? Okay, that's great. Okay. So Penny and I have done this presentation a couple times, and I think it gets better every time because we have such good discussions with the folks that actually join us. And so like Penny said before, please stop us at any time or put the questions in the chat, and we'll and Bakari can help facilitate those questions. So there's a big misconception out there that agencies and foundations, you know, don't fund qualitative research, and that's just not true. And so what we're doing today is going through some examples, and let me get to where I need to be. Oh, here we go. So we're gonna, I guess we already introduced ourselves, and then we're going to give you some examples of some qualitative projects that have been funded in the last few years, then some information on how to find funding, and then talk a little bit about the funders themselves. And then Penny will talk more about Qual Lab and the supports that they provide. And then we'll have a discussion. Okay, so Penny, you want to take us away here?
Sure. So part of why we're doing this session is that, you know, I think Kim and I, part of my role here at Ohio State is to really kind of elevate the quality of qualitative research, from faculty to postdocs to grad students, anything that is really just not in a course, because I think there is, as Kim was saying, a misconception that funders don't necessarily fund research projects. And so in terms of this session, our goal is really to get you to kind of understand what happens behind closed doors, the examples of what has happened before in terms of qualitative in these different organizations and what they funded, et cetera. So in the chat, I did put a document that is available for you. It's called Grant Qual Projects, just for today, that Kim and I put together with E. Alexander, and they're examples of what different funders have funded regarding qualitative or mixed methods research. So NSF, I actually find is quite innovative with some of the grants that they've provided to qualitative scholars. I know originally I didn't necessarily realize that. I thought, oh, NSF, they must not necessarily be as innovative, but not the case. They are willing to take risks as long as it's really thought out well by you as the scholar, and you're walking the reader through every aspect of your design. So here are a couple examples. This also mirrors what is on the page in the Excel sheet, but you can see that there are mixed methods designs, but also in particular, when you're looking at big data sets and qualitative, which is, I think for some an oxymoron, but there's really a whole big data set push recently in terms of qualitative research. Legal issues and non-recognized loan settlements is one that they funded from Tufts, and it's about the socially constructed concept that is very prevalent in qualitative research. In another area, here's an ethnographic investigation of trust and distrust. So ethnography and you know, very innovative kind of work here that you'll see.
So before we change the slides, I want to say that I've reviewed for NSF over the last few months a couple times, and sometimes I think qualitative researchers don't think that there's a place for them, but many of those proposals that I read, and some of them were very, very good, had a strong qualitative component. And what people were looking for, what the program officers and the panel was looking for, was an expert in that qualitative piece. And so think about perhaps not being the principal investigator on a project, but think about being the expert in that methodology. And that's what a good team has. It's going to have experts in every piece and part of that project. And so that's also another way to get involved. Maybe not as PI, but definitely as a co-principal investigator and bringing expertise to a specific part of that methodology. Let's see, what's the next slide? Oh, NIH, another big funder. So Penny.
Yes, so action ethnography. I mean, really, that's one of those that you wouldn't necessarily think that NIH would fund, but yet action ethnography, you're in the community, you're working with veterans and traumatic brain injury scholars or brain injury people. So it's a very engaged approach to medical work and research. I know at Ohio State, there is a large traumatic brain injury collaboration of people from adult learners to doctors across the gamut, training sessions. So what are the ways in which you could think about cross interdisciplinary research to get at a particular topic that you're interested in? Here's just a general qualitative study, 3 mixed methods studies, and it's hard to tell in this last one about what it is, but I think if you take a look again at that Excel sheet, you'll be able to see a little bit more information that we've provided for you about each one of these projects. Kim, you tend to know a little bit more about NIH and IES than I do. I can talk about the qualitative examples here, but I think, and I think in a minute, we'll actually start to talk about the personalities of each of these funders.
That's right. It's just, I don't know, you know, what more to say other than qualitative is not, that qualitative studies are accepted, and it just has to be, it has to make sense in terms of the research questions that are being asked. And so they're very open to having qualitative methods involved in these studies. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can look at these. Oh, and speaking of IES, still haven't gotten the request for proposals this year. They should be out at any time, and they're usually submitted in August. So, that RFP will be coming out very soon.
In IES, one of the examples is about a leaky pipeline, community college students and pathways to the bachelor's degree. So kind of that K-12 to higher ed mix. And there it's about focus groups and really diving into their database that they have, but then about the focus groups and analyzing the qualitative data in this project. So again, qualitative is one that they are funding and picking up on for IES. Spencer, all right, Spencer has a new equity grant that they have given out, which is really exciting. So definitely take a look at that, because they have had expressed a intentional interest in working on issues of race, racial inequity, diversity, and so their call has reflected that most certainly. They also are, I think, out of these, more likely to fund a qualitative project than the others, at least statistically, and looking at what has been funded here. So from grounded theory, which we didn't see in the others, to a critical diversity framework that they've used critical theory and ethnographic methods. I mean, these are markedly different than the ones that we've seen on the earlier slides in terms of examples. But I have to say, I think that NSF and others are kind of catching up in terms of the innovations that can be found in qualitative research.
That's right. All right, so how do you find these funding opportunities? Here's a couple, and we'll send these slides out later so you can easily click on the links. You do that, don't you, Penny? Do you send or make them available on the website?
We certainly can. We will. We can make this available on the website, and Bakari can put it with the video right on the website.
Okay, sounds good. So we have many of you are in EHE and you're researchers, and you get a monthly newsletter from our office that I put together. I am, and I'm looking for funding opportunities that are appropriate for EHE, and we have a very diverse group of researchers, so it is quite long. But all of those funding opportunities are added to this database, and we keep it up to date. You can do some searching. There's some tags that we've added to these funding opportunities. So please check that out. It's a curated collection, which means it's not like you're searching Google. You're never going to get 3 million hits. You might get 5, which is of course a much better focused return list than what Google could ever do. Not that I'm saying I Google all the time, but please take advantage of this database. There's another tool that Ohio State pays the licensing for. Everybody has access to this, graduate students, undergrads, faculty, postdocs, everybody. And what you do is you can set up email alerts. When I was actively writing proposals, this was a super tool for me because I use Google Scholar too, by the way, to find those funding opportunities. But I would set up my searches. I would describe the kinds of research that I was looking for. If a funding opportunity came through that met those criteria, I would get an email, which was super. And at the time I was doing a lot of elementary science education work, and that's where I was finding information from foundations and from the feds and from all sorts of different funding opportunities. So please, if you haven't signed up for SPIN, please do that. And if you have any questions about any of this, of course, you can email me. So then we were going to go to the personalities of foundation funders. One of the things that we do in our office pre-COVID was that we would take funding, we would take faculty and researchers to DC, and we would go to the different federal agencies. And I know this is foundations, but it's so important for you to feel comfortable with these funders. That means that you talk to them, you visit them, you, in this case, have a Zoom with them. And it's understanding these funders is really important, I think, to make you feel comfortable. Right, it helps to write that proposal if you understand how the funder works. Now, we've been funded through most everybody that we're going to talk about. So even if, so I can share with you who's been funded, maybe talk to not only the program officer, but talk to the people that have been funded. We have examples, for instance, about Spencer. Let me go to the next one. So we have an example of a small grant that was funded through Spencer. Arya Ansari in Human Sciences has been willing to share that. It is a wonderful example of what they're looking for. So in general, our office has examples in a grant repository of examples of award-winning grants. So that helps tremendously so that you see this template of what was funded in the past. I kind of got off on a tangent there, but we have that example of a Spencer. So Spencer has all sorts of programs. Penny just talked about the new one on, what is it called? Racial equity or whatever it's called. So there's a new program in there. They have their small grants, which are $50,000, 3 submissions each year. So, it's not like you have to wait a year on like some of these opportunities to resubmit. There are large Spencers. There are research and practice Spencers where you work closely with like a school district. So there's multiple possibilities for this. I mean, you can read these slides. So reviewer comments. They used to not give reviewer comments. And I actually, in this last year, I've had some people tell me that they got comments, which I think is a good thing. Another thing I always did and suggest that everybody do is look at the awards that have been funded in the last year, last couple years, even past then. See what kinds of things the sponsor is interested in. And that's not just for Spencer. I mean, that's for everyone. Make sure that you know what they want.
And that's a part of why we provided that Excel sheet and just did a search on their website so that you have down and dirty all these different examples for each funder right there at your fingertips. But you can also find that on their websites. As Kim mentioned with Spencer, they've had a shift in leadership. So for a while, you may be very familiar with Spencer. Don't talk to me. We're not going to talk to you. We're really going to let the proposals speak for themselves, because if and I've heard the program officers share this, if I as a program officer tell you something and you go in that direction and then you don't get funded, that's just, not what we want to do. So we want to make sure that we're not sharing with you. There's been a shift in leadership, and now, as Kim has said, there's more feedback. There are they will talk with you a little bit more than they have in the past, but they are very, very clear about wanting to make sure that your work fits the direction of Spencer and what they want to fund. So I also find that if you go up through the process and get something that is almost funded, you're in that last tier, you tend to get a lot more feedback from Spencer than the first blush of, oh, sorry. And then that group tends to get less feedback than if you really had made it through the different layers of their review process. So feedback is good in this case. So.
Oh, here was just an example that's on the website in terms of talking to program officers and what this program officer said about being on a review panel. So yeah, what advice do you have for scholars seeking funding? And a lot of it is the so what. Make the topic mean something. And I work with PIs all the time in terms of, and people come to me and they say, I want to do this. And I'm like, okay, why? What's the point? So what's the problem? Why is it a problem? What do you want to do about it? And how are you going to know if you've made a difference? So just things to think through. Oh, then now Lumina, and Penny has some experience with Lumina. I don't, but Penny can talk to her experience.
So Jamie Marasotis is the president, director, whatever his title is over there, but now he's been at Lumina for a bit and he's made a shift, and now that shift is really permeated throughout the organization. One of their overarching goals is about really working on post-high school degree credentials and taking the people who are in that pool of potentially starting community college or starting their degree and then stopping out, for example. And so they really want to work in that realm. They don't actually have all these calls. Instead, they ask for you to fill out a survey and see if there's a good match with them. It's about funding people where there's a good match, a connection. I've attended as well, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or in Lumina at in the space itself in Indianapolis. In all of those, it's about a relationship, a collaboration, convenings, connecting, and really, as Kim had said, the so what makes such a difference. Tell me how this is really going to impact and make a shift in the field. So it's really about unsolicited all year round. There's not a deadline or a due date. It's your own imposed due date. And they won't provide that guidance beforehand in terms of submitting. So there's their database. Anything else, Kim? I think that's, follow them on Twitter. You'll get a good sense of who they are and what they'll fund. William Grant.
Yeah, so the next foundation, and there are plenty of foundations out there. We just picked these three because we knew a little bit about them. So William T. Grant, and they have multiple programs. They have a scholars program that is for early career, and they have some other just general funding avenues as well.
They're also, so William T. Grant is more K-12 focused. Obviously, Lumina would be more post-secondary, and or the transition from high school to college. William T. Grant, so I'll say this here, is a little bit more hands-on than some other foundations or grant funders. So it's just, again, about that relationship and what kind of relationship you want with the organization. So at least on the side, that's what I found when I've worked with colleagues who have a really strong connection with William T. Grant. And they're very committed to equity and issues as well.
And there's an award search, so you can see what they funded in the past and also see like the amounts. So let's say that you have a project that you need $200,000 to do. If you look at an award in a database for a funder, and if that is a typical amount, then that's good. But if they don't fund any more than $10,000, it's not a good place to go for the project that you need, an X amount of dollars for. This is super important too, that you take advantage of the OSU office, foundation office. They have wonderful resources, and it's a little bit tricky in terms of, do you go through our office, ORIC, and the Office of Sponsored Programs, or do you go through the foundation office? The important thing is to reach out to somebody in our office, and me, and we can help direct you in terms of, does this submission need to go directly through Foundation Relations? Does it have to go through the Office of Sponsored Programs? Is it a mix? So sometimes it's really confusing in terms of these foundation funders, who you should work with. But if you reach out to our office, whether it's our grants managers, Ann Smith or myself, we can help you navigate who's going to submit, and if you have to do one of those EPA 005s, some of you recognize that jargon, but yeah, we can help you figure that out. And we can, in fact, submit, I never say these letters right, the not-for-profit, whatever, Ohio State does have that designation, so we can submit to those kinds of opportunities. Again, we just figure it out, but don't try to do any of that stuff on your own. Reach out to us immediately, and we can help you navigate it.
Yeah. Michiko said 501c3.
That's it. I never remember. I always get those letters and numbers mixed up, but right, we are one of those, and sometimes we have to have special paperwork to give to the funder, and we have all of that. We can help you do all that.
Yes, yes, and that goes for grants and contracts. I know, I should say, I know faculty, if you've fill out your conflict of interest form. Some faculty can take up to a certain percentage of work outside of the university. So you have that option only if you fill out the appropriate paperwork and it's approved, all that good stuff.
Right.
As well as there are benefits for working with contracts through the university. So do go through your university and use the resources that are available, like, you know, Kim and her expertise in terms of working on this, your budget office in terms of the contract and developing that and the language. It does help to have those resources to protect you, as well as different organizations for startup companies and all that at the university level. I'm sure not just Ohio State, but every university is paying attention to these issues.
Absolutely. And it's not just for faculty, it's for everyone. It's for students, undergraduates, grads, postdocs, our research scientists, as well as our faculty. So all of those, I think there's probably sometimes people get overwhelmed and they just think, there's just no way I can do all of this. Well, you don't have to do it all. You know, we have people in place that will help you understand how to navigate all of these, all this red tape, which it's just part of our life. You know, we have to do it. Well, so now I don't even know what time it is, but here we have, okay, so we have some information on 3 of our biggest funders for this college. So NSF, I'm going to go to the next slide. Well, you know what? So I was really, really excited over the last couple weeks. There's a couple new programs that have come out of NSF. One is racial equity, and I sent that to every researcher in the college. So you got that, I think, last week, and that was something totally new. Here is another new program at NSF. They're calling it BCSER, building capacity. In the call, they specifically say qualitative, it's professional development. So it's a career development award. And I thought this was so interesting how they're trying to broaden their base. People that have never done research in STEM but are interested in it, this might be a place for you to look. So I'm just thinking, wow, you know, the opportunities, I think, are broadening in all of the agencies. You know, it used to be NIH, for instance, was only health. Well, now they're doing tons of education and training. And yeah, so I just got excited when I saw those couple new opportunities. So I guess I'll go back here. This is the boring stuff, maybe. But NSF, please don't think that it's just for STEM, like the hardcore science disciplines. I have been after people in this college to write an IUS, which is Improving Undergraduate STEM Education Forever. They are looking for STEM education proposals. Yeah, so there's education, they do basically economics. We've had behavioral economists get funded through in our college, like somebody like Drew Hanks, and consumer sciences. So there's law, they do anthropology. I mean, it's not just hard sciences like physics. It's much more than that. And, but not health. Okay, so you have to, you know, if you happen to be in human nutrition, I don't think any of those folks have ever gotten funded through NSF, but it's possible depending on what, like, part of could be cellular biology, but not related to health. All right. So, yeah, so graduate students, early career researchers, conferences, pre-K through Gray. One of my program officers from one of my first funded projects through NSF, he used to always say pre-K through Gray. So that covers it all. So, you know, it's looking at grandparents. How do grandparents become scientifically literate? Okay, I can see a lot of conversations happening with people like me because I'm a grandma now. So again, I'm just trying to say that it's wide open. It's not just K-12. It's not formal. It can be informal education. They're super, super broad. The peer review process is really important with NSF. It is anonymous. You are not allowed, like I said, that I sit on panels, but I'm not allowed to say which program. The program officers, it's so important for you to build a relationship with that program officer before you ever submit that proposal. They sit on those panels and they make decisions. So they can provide feedback. It's important for you to have a conversation with them, maybe a page or less, and talk about that idea that you have. Is it appropriate for that program? They can help to make sure that you're submitting to the correct program. Is the methodology something that they would welcome? Those are the kinds of questions that you ask. And there's an award search. So yeah, so that's, please think about NSF. Then NIH. So it's the National Institutes of Health. And so there's 27 institutes and centers. They have these funding opportunity announcements. They have notices of special interest. The thing that's I think interesting about NIH to me is that the peer review process isn't anonymous. You know exactly who's going to be reviewing your proposal. So I'm super familiar with NSF. That's just not the way NIH does that. Two totally different processes. And you still want to talk to the program officer, you know, and you actually say when you submit the proposal, what study section or what review panel you want it to be sent to. So there's all sorts of things that you need to talk to that program officer about and build that relationship. Super important. Doesn't matter what kind of research you're doing. And then IES, another different take on that panel review, peer review process. IES, those program officers reach out to you when you submit a letter of intent, and they are willing to read that whole proposal, which is amazing if you give them enough time. They are not at all involved in deciding who gets funded. They're in the room, but the panel itself makes the decision. So I think that's, again, it's a different view of that peer review process. Yeah.
That's so interesting, Kim, and I know we'll leave a lot of time for questions, but I have one about IES. I've always heard from working at other institutions that colleges of education in particular have a hard time with IES versus NSF, about just tough nut to crack, tough to get an acceptance. And then when scholars do, it's like, wow, that's amazing. Maybe you can help us all, you know, go that way. But it seems like here you've kind of worked it out with IES a little bit more than some others. And I know some of the people in this conversation are across the country. So do you have thoughts about IES versus NSF, for example?
Yeah, I do. I've never been funded through IES. I've never submitted a proposal, but I've worked with people on plenty of the submissions. And of course, the best person to talk to is somebody that's been funded through that program. But I think that, so the What Works Clearinghouse, okay, that's the kind of gold level, what I want to call it, gold level research that these IES proposals have to, they are research. You have to have hypotheses. You have to have the research methodology is extremely robust in these. And so when you think of how it's scored, that research plan is super, super, super important. And if you don't have experience in that thing that you are trying to do, then you're going to be in trouble. So with NSF, I think that they fund, and I'm just talking about in the education, they want a robust research plan or evaluation plan. They do want that. They want a couple of research questions, but that methodology does not have to be as robust in the NSF plan. And I don't mean it can be loosey-goosey or anything. I mean, it still has to make sense, but it doesn't have to be as robust. And you get like 25 pages with IES, and like 20 pages is the research plan, okay? And so they're wanting experimental studies. They're wanting, I guess you can do some quasi-experimental, but I mean, we're talking, I don't know, hard research. I'm not even sure if that's a word, but so what is super important is that people are willing to resubmit. So you write your proposal, you get feedback, you do a red team review, you get people to look at that methodology and make sure that is in fact gold standard.
Mm-hmm. NSF has written about that gold standard, and there's definitely, in Qualitative, a lot of critique against that, gold standard people have funded, and Betty St. Pierre has written about that. And so what I hear is, because for me, if something's going to be, grounded theory or constructivist grounded theory for that matter, it still needs to be rigorous and strong design. It's what I hear you talking about is about the approach, the epistemological approach, the ontological, the worldview, if you will. And if it's a hardcore positivist hypothesis, design, structured kind of approach versus a post-positivist approach with a mixed methods or something like that. So it's about that. Both could be rigorous. It's just a different type of research design that they are wanting, including, this very positivist design that you've called robust, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's
I think you're absolutely right. It's just, I read the comments from proposals from IES that have not been funded. Mm-hmm. And it's the research design. And I don't think, and I guess I'm not really making a differentiation between quantitative and qualitative. It's just the research design. Mm-hmm. Do the questions themselves align with the methodology that has been proposed, and what are the instruments? How is the data going to be analyzed? How is is there, if it's quantitative, is there going to be power? It is super, super focused on that research design. Now, the one thing that IES does now is that they have the different tracks. And so they do have the exploratory. So, and then they have the efficacy, and they have, like the scale up. So you can, in fact, start smaller. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to have maybe as much experience as, like, if you're going to do an efficacy trial, you better have done one of those before, right, or whatever. So they really want to believe that whatever you're doing, you did before, and you have pilot data, or you have, you're not starting from scratch.
Thank you.
But I think probably the best thing to do is to talk to somebody who's in fact been funded through the program. So then you have that firsthand knowledge of what is required for that submission. Let's see what's next. Oh, this was our slide. So Penny, take us away on this.
Yes, as Kim had just talked about, your alignment is key. You have to have a clear problem statement, what you're going to do, and it has to match all the way through. So it's, if you think about a kaleidoscope, right, in your work on the proposal, you're trying to make sure that that kaleidoscope is in focus and there's a clear thought process all the way through. The reader can understand every section of your design from beginning to end, right? So it's more than just, I'm going to do interviews. Oh, I'm going to do qualitative. It's easier, right? That's not necessarily the case. So if you're going to drop everything down to your methods, oh, I'm just doing interviews. Oh, I'm doing thematic analysis. It's a surefire way to get rejected. You really have to have a methodological approach that matches, and if it's exploratory and it's thematic design and doesn't have a methodological approach, okay, it just has to be very tight and rigorous according to, qualitative guidelines. So you want to make sure that the research question matches the entire design. There's some information here on mixed methods. I know there's a lot of people are doing mixed methods now, which gives you a post-positivist approach, right? Not your positivist, not your, constructivist approach, but an overlap of the two. And so that congruency matters. And I've worked with the College of Ed, there, as Kim had mentioned, you can work with our team in ORIC on research designs and all that, and your grants, and this team is here to help. So with Qualitative, there have been some faculty who, we all get, hey, revise and resubmit. So with the grants, can you tweak this? And it's really about, when it is about strengthening that research design, that's where I come in, and the Qual Lab, and I can help to strengthen those methodological approaches and your methods to make sure it's congruent. And then in some cases, it gets funded and just needs a little bit of help, second eyes. That's what our office is for in ORIC, is to help faculty land these grants. So if we can be helpful in any way, give you feedback, and you take it with a grain of salt, you do or don't want to do it, it's your work. So in any case, we're here for you for that. So you would go through Kim in her office, and she can always let you know if you want to connect with us or seek a consultation through Qual Lab, and we'll meet with you for an hour and give you resources and just advice. So when it's faculty, I'm always involved. Postdocs too. If it's a dissertation with students, we have students trained up to help, and there's always two of us providing feedback. Sometimes people will write us into their grants, and then we actually work with your research team. How do you do a good focus group? What's the arc of an interview? That kind of thing. We've worked with teams before and been written into grants, and that provides a little bit of funding for Qual Lab to hire students, and we would train them. But then that way, you would have access to them. There's other proposals where it's just, we're going to go to Qual Lab this many times, and we're not going to fund any GRAs, but we're going to use Qual Lab as a resource. And funders have responded to that and appreciated that as a resource. We're here. Same on the quant side. We have that through the quant center too. So, next slide. Oh, I'm looking at time. I know we want to leave a lot of time for questions. So perfect. What timing? If you have a question, please unmute yourself and jump in. Thank you. Or pop it up here.
Hey, may I ask a question?
Please, yes. Hi, Michiko. Good
guys. It's good to see everybody. So I'm fixing to apply to a William T. grant, and I just wanted to know what it meant for something to be hands-on versus hands-off, so I know what to expect.
Yes. So thanks. I'm glad you picked up on that. So prior to this, I was a department head and worked with a team that had a grant from William T. Grant Foundation. And so with their work, the funder was there at different times, bringing that group that was funded together with other people that they funded, but also had feedback that they wanted to be implemented into the grant at different times. Hey, could you respond to this or that? I mean, it was an active, engaged relationship, which is really exciting in some ways. Sometimes you could get a little bit like, oh no, just give me my money, I'll send you the report at the end, right? I mean, there's that too. And do you want somebody that's not hands-on at all? Well, sometimes then you'll miss that collaborative conversation. So in any case, that was some of the feedback that they had shared, was that they care a lot and are engaged with you as a funder. And in that case, hopefully, like with journal pubs and reviewers, hopefully it's better by the end of that engaged process than it would have been in isolation. So just thoughts. Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kathy Cornelius, Dr. Kathy Cornelius, and I teach in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I've been a practitioner, a principal, a gifted director for like, I think this is my 35th year, okay? So it's been a long time. And so I taught at Ball State and IU, and that's UPUI, and that's how I heard, I don't even know, really met Dr. Patton Davis. She's legendary, and I taught some courses there as an adjunct in the summer and in the evenings. And I mean, she's legendary. Every time, my background is culturally responsive teaching, critical theory, critical race theory. And so I wanted to thank you, all of you, that this series has been wonderful. And I appreciate the lunch hour, because I teach from 8 to 8 every day, Monday through Friday, right? And meetings. And so this has been a perfect time. But long story short, I'm interested, but I'm not skilled in research. I am a wonderful practitioner, have lots of awards, and I even have the data, right? So right now, my midterms, my final projects, we can count all of this, my community partners. So, and I took pictures, and I'm so glad you offered this, but I need to know, number one, if I'm at a different institution, okay, how do I navigate? Because I'll probably have to have a seasoned, like Dr. Lori or someone else at Ohio State or IUPUI or IU that guides me through it, guides me through the process. So I'm looking for a research team. And so how do I find that and navigate institutions? Do I have to use my institution, or can I use their institution? What are the legalities? How does this work?
Yeah, you don't, you absolutely have to go through your own institution.
Okay.
And so even at Ohio State, and we're quite large, every college and even departments within those colleges have different grant support units. And so in the College of Education and Human Ecology, we're different than arts and science or chemistry or whatever. So I think it's super important for you to figure out who that person is at your university. Do you have an office sponsored programs? Do you have, so I would talk to your department chair and find out what their vision is for externally funded research, and you've got some ideas, and then that chair should be able to tell you, or at least get you in touch with the person from your office of sponsored programs. And then you can start to uncover what is the standard operating procedure at your university. You do not, none of these funders are going to give you money yourself. And you don't want that anyway, because you don't want to pay taxes. You don't want to be responsible if something goes wrong. So all of these funders are going to require you to go through your organization. Now, sometimes it's a simple fit, but it has to be, somebody that takes on the risk, that is fiscally responsible for whatever the money happens to be, whether it's, $100 or $1 million. So that's what you have to do. And I'm sorry that you don't already know that.
Yeah, well, see, we
Who that
were,
person is.
yeah, we went from a teacher's college to a university, and we're just starting graduate programs. And so, but you know, I have always presented at national conferences like NAME and NAPSI. And so, yeah, and I take my students' work with me, and you know, I always get wonderful feedback. I just need to find a seasoned and a veteran researcher that's already part of a grant, right? So maybe that's what I start with, is find someone that's interested in my line of research, maybe
Sure.
through organizations or through your departments, and then they would take care of that, right? I would just be part of the research team providing the data, right?
Right, and
That
there's collaborations
possibility.
like that in our college
Yeah.
where we've connected people, or they're already connected, because you want the researcher to know institutional review board and all these things that are a little bit different than a practitioner. So as a team, it, you know, that you would bring the practitioner voice, which would be really important. I see a couple of questions in the
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Oh, the last question, I was thinking about taking that workshop in June. Will they have more information about this as well?
Oh, yes, the Advanced Methods Institute. I'll put that in the chat.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Bakari?
Yes. So we have another question that I don't know if this was answered. I don't believe it was, from Lindsay Rowe, asking basically regarding qualitative research, its grants, funding, and how research anticipated funding needs. I guess so. The question really looks like is focusing on how do you successfully request funding for qualitative research?
I can chime in. I'm sort of wondering, what are people asking to be funded for qualitative research, especially for smaller grants where they're not funding their time or salary? What things do people successfully ask for qualitative research funding?
So one is transcription, that, you know, often, even if you're doing it online in Zoom and Zoom will transcribe it for you, you still have to have time for you or your team to actually go through and do the transcription. Software like In Vivo or Deduce, or we just, an announcement for our college, we just got approved. Bakari and I put in a proposal for Transana, which does video. It's much like a software like In Vivo or Deduce, but for video. And so with all these videos and Zoom videos, it'll help you with that. So you could ask for software, you could ask for training to train yourself up on that software. Kim, do you have other things to throw out?
Yeah, I mean, there's incentives for participants. I mean, if you're going to do, you know, you want to maybe give them a gift card, so that could be possible. I don't know. Yeah, so I have a whole list of things that people put in budgets and things that they need to think about. And so it really, so you have to look at the sponsor, what they are willing to fund. Sometimes they aren't willing to fund personnel costs. Sometimes they're not willing to fund tuition for a graduate student, but there is a program at the graduate school that would pay for the tuition if the sponsor would be willing to pick up the stipend. So everything is just really nuanced. And so I'm not, I don't know you, so I don't know if you're in my college or not, but you know what, but I would be willing to help you if you just sent me an email. It's lightle.16, Lighle.16, and I can send you, or even talk to you about the kinds of things. Oh, okay. To talk about the kinds of things that are typically put in budgets, but it's so much reflected in terms of what the sponsor will pay for, the amount of money that is allowed, and the work that you want to do. The scope of work has to reflect that budget. Again, it's all about alignment. You can have the most beautiful proposal, but and it could be a wonderful research plan, but if the scope of work does not reflect the budget, then it's not going to get funded, you know. So So it really is just, it's a huge dance. And it takes a lot of time, and you got to spend you can't start today and think you're going to submit tomorrow. It's just going to work.
Bakari, is there another question in our last minute together? Or was that it?
Bakari, you're muted.
Okay. We can't hear you. Is that it? All right. Thank you. Let me say, in just wrapping up, that the College of Education and Human Ecology has, the Qual Lab. We have resources on the webpage. Please see our webpage, videos, and all that. Also, I mentioned consulting, and so the Qual Lab will do that, but the dean and associate dean are very clear that it's only for our college because of the funding, but do know business school and the College of Ed and foundations and other agencies have contracted with us. So, hey, I'd love some consultation. We need your services. We need your help, or we want you to help us with, this process and the research. So just talk with me about if you want to have us contract, because then that means you could work with our team, but wouldn't have to train up or hire a slew of grad students. Sometimes it's just works with grants this way. So just to let you know that, but for grad students and faculty in the college, we're always here for you. Just shoot us an email from our website. Thank you for taking the time to be here. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Bakari, for hosting us.
Thank you.
And everybody for taking the time. Know that we're here. We just appreciate you so much, and have a wonderful summer. We'll see you this summer, possibly with a content analysis series for Qual Lab lunches this summer. So we'll see you soon.
So recording